Good afternoon. Welcome to everybody. So glad that you're here for this time of the presentation by our building committee. And so without delaying any more, I'd like to lead us in prayer, and then I'll turn it over to Barry Hudson, who is our building committee chair. Let's pray. Oh God, we thank you for all your gifts. We thank you for the gifts and graces you've given to each one on the building committee and our board of trustees. And we thank you for the work that they have done. We thank you, oh God, that you give us a vision and that you equip us to move toward that. And as we continue to move forward, we pray for your guidance at every step of the way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Dr. Brewster. Appreciate everybody coming back to the sanctuary this afternoon. It's great to see everybody here. My name is Barry Hudson. My wife, Bobby Jo, and I grew up in the church and raised our family here. So we've seen a lot of changes over the last 60 years. Most of the time we're up in the TV room. But I've got to tell you, I'm more excited about this than I was 42 years ago when we started the television ministry, because I think this is going to have a major long-term impact on this congregation, on this downtown faith community. I'd like to start out by introducing the building committee, and if you'll stand up, Cindy Bales, Jack Benson, Fred Cantu, Ken Devereaux, Jeff Dyer, I don't think Jeff made it here today, Richard Fate, Gay Fuller, Ben Cliffel, Ryan Locker-Miller, Mason Mink, Daniel Rowe, Amy Sorley, and Debbie Whitten. And also our staff representatives are Dr. Brewster, Larry Ammerman, Linda Smoot, Nancy Fisher, and Sandy Williams. So, okay, you can sit down. Now, I appreciate the service of everybody on the committee. We've been working together over the last 2 years to bring this vision to the congregation. We have also have a subcommittee that has been specializing in looking at the parking garage element, which we'll talk about towards the end of this presentation. Jerry Caldwell, chair of the Board of Trustees, has sort of headed up that committee with myself, Fred Cantu, Jeff Dyer, Chris Loki. Chris is here, and Larry Emmerman, Dr. Brewster, and Nancy Fisher. I'd also like to introduce Tom Willis from HH Architects is here today. They're the architects we've been working with. They really sort of specialize in church architecture, and they have brought a fresh vision to us, some great information on how how to retrofit some historic churches and the needs that new congregations have now. I think that's one of the things that we'll end up talking about quite a bit, because this church has a long history, 164 years, 5 different buildings and 4 different sites, but over half of that time, 87 years, has been here at 5th Street. We used to say 5th and Florence before we closed Florence in front of the church and beside the church, but there's a long history here. But we've done some incremental expansions of the church, and most of those are related to children and youth. In the 50s, we built the Epworth Hall, the Justin Youth Building. In the 60s, we built the Armstrong Children's Wing. And then in the 90s, we also built another addition to the Children's Wing. So it's all been about children, youth, and families. But we have a great history here. The needs of our congregation continually change. And in particular, as we talk about our new members coming into the church, Generation X, Generation Y, the millennials, they view things a little bit differently. They're attracted to this Gothic revival church. They come here, but they're looking for some different worship experiences, not always just the traditional worship service in this sanctuary. So we're in the need of 3 major things: gathering space, fellowship space, if you will, need for new non-traditional worship space, And then also some expanded space again for our children. Mr. Mark is doing a great job as far as attracting those young families to the children's division and everything. So, but things have changed. This sanctuary was built with the Northex, which is very limited as far as a space coming in out of the weather and coming in out of the sun, out of the cold, out of the wind. But it really wasn't made a space for gathering, for fellowship. And that's one of the things that we need now. This is a perspective of our church building, looking from the east. And what we're going to talk about today is possibly expanding that into some new worship spaces that will address the needs for our congregation for many years to come. I hope that people came to the 9:30 or 11 o'clock worship services today, but we had Andy Taft here talking about the incredible growth of residential here in downtown Fort Worth. You know, he was talking about the number of units that have been built within the last few years, the number of units that are underway now, and the growth of over 10,000 residents just around our church. Dr. Brewster's series, Heart of the City, we are going to be the heart of the city. We are the spiritual heart of the city. And we're really becoming a neighborhood church again, because that's what people that are moving downtown are looking for, a different lifestyle. They want to be able to walk to work. Although what Andy says, a lot of people live downtown and do the reverse commute. But by being a neighborhood church, we can attract those people. We have a lot of people coming into the area, but we need the spaces to accommodate them. This is an aerial view of our church campus. I always like to point out the green cross in front that Dr. Foote put out there. He helped lay out the parking lot. So everybody knew that this was a Christian community as you flew over the site. But we have a 9-block area that the church controls. And it's very important of that 9 blocks is that we not do anything directly in front of the church. Between 7th Street and in Henderson, Jacksboro Highway, we want to protect those views of the uneven Gothic towers. But we have some other opportunities to grow. And so really we're looking at an expansion to the east of the church, on the east side of the church. So what would that expansion look like? Well, just real abstract. Does anybody know what this is? This is the footprint of the church. This is actually and it looks sort of unorganized and sort of an odd shape, because originally the church was built around a couple of hotels and businesses that were on the block. But the biggest space that we have is the sanctuary we have. So that's easily identified, the sanctuary for traditional worship. The next biggest space we have are the children's wing, the preschool area along 3rd Street. Wesley Hall, the fellowship hall, is the next biggest space. Now, before the sanctuary was completed in 1931, we actually used Wesley Hall for our worship services, as well as the garden, which is in between Wesley Hall and the sanctuary. But really, Wesley Hall was designed as a fellowship hall. That was the fellowship area for our church. But now we have the gathering, we have 1111, and it's competing for that space. And so we really don't have that fellowship space for gathering at other times. Other big piece we have on our footprint are the clergy and staff offices, and the music suite directly above that on the 2nd floor, and then Memorial Chapel on the east side. So what I'd like to suggest is that we need something that organizes our floor plan, organizes our worship spaces, organizes our classrooms. And what we're suggesting is that we need a central gathering space, a rotunda in the center of the campus to organize space around. And what we're thinking is that in the middle of that rotunda would be a labyrinth, a place for meditation, in the terrazzo floor of the dome. So let's bring in a non-traditional worship space on the east side of the campus to sort of fill in the gap. And we need to expand our children's area, so an addition to the children's wing. And then we need a window into the children's area. One thing that I found out is that a lot of people, they stay in their certain part of the church. If you don't have children or grandchildren over in the children's wing, you don't see that children activity. And so we want to be able to see into that. But by creating the axis along the rotunda, we can have access from throughout the church into this main gathering space. So we take that abstract form and then we put it into a floor plan. One thing we want to emphasize today is that this is a work in progress. We've come a long way over the last couple of years, but still we're trying to decide and figure out what the congregation wants and needs, and that's the reason for this presentation today. We want your input. But we have a general idea of what we think is going to work better as far as the floor plan. So we put that in the context of the overall site and how that fits in with the circulation around the church, the various parking lots areas, and the way people come into the church. So one of the things we're talking about is a parking garage. That's been on the master plan for a number of years, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation, but this is really a time when, with all this new development downtown, with new residential units, and all the new square footage downtown that Andy Taft talked about, we need more parking downtown. Not just the church, but downtown area does. One thing we've talked about in the building committee is that the City of Fort Worth zoning ordinance doesn't require buildings, office buildings, to provide parking. It's up to the adjoining property owners to provide parking. So there's a real need for parking downtown, and I think that's really good news for the church because we have an opportunity to build the parking garage. One thing, probably the first phase of the master plan after the parking garage would be the expansion of the children's area. This would be a 2-story space with 6 to 8 classrooms on each level. The other major addition would be the non-traditional worship space. This multipurpose area would be about 2.5 times the size of Wesley Hall. And then the central rotunda, the gathering space. And that's really what I'd like to talk about further right now. The central rotunda, by being in the center of the building in campus, as you come in the west door, you would see into the rotunda. As you come in from the garden, you would see into this open space, the rotunda. And if you come in from the east side, from the new parking garage, again, it all goes to the central rotunda. And this becomes a central gathering space for all the different groups of the church. It's intergenerational, different Sunday school classes. This would be the place where you'd meet. I can't tell you how many people come into the church and they say, well, where is this or where is that? Where's the restroom? How do I get to the sanctuary? Well, everything will orient off of this central rotunda. The children preschool would be a quadrant to the north, and there would be a window into that with the indoor playground that we're proposing at the entry to the children's area. The clergy and staff would be to the northwest, off the rotunda. Traditional sanctuary worship coming in here, there would be a window in here. The courtyard and Wesley Hall to the south, Memorial Chapel, and then the multipurpose non-traditional worship to the east. But all these would have direct access to the central rotunda. The elevators would be relocated next to the rotunda, so it would be easy access there. So you don't even have a hard time finding the elevators. And there would be an overlook from the second floor. So the central rotunda, we're proposing, it's over 3,200 square feet. It's 64 foot wide. That's wider than Wesley Hall. So it's a very significantly large area. So we have sort of a bottleneck, if you will, in where the Welcome Center is, that people come through there, but there's not enough room there to gather and to talk and visit. So off of the rotunda would be a coffee bar, a cafe in the Welcoming Center, so people could get their cup of coffee and stay and visit. On the south side, the rotunda would be the new entrance to Wesley Hall. Wesley Hall, the idea is that we would flip Wesley Hall, and the stage area would be removed, and that would be the entry into the rotunda area. And Wesley Hall would be flipped around where the speaker would be at the south end, which would be closer to 5th Street. I'm sure that you've been in Wesley Hall with a board meeting or something. You have to go to the restroom. You have to exit the front around the speaker, or people come in late. And so by flipping it around, it allows everybody to focus on the speaker and have that access off the rotunda. We have new restroom facilities closer to the sanctuary. As I mentioned, the labyrinth in the center, currently we're showing it about 42-foot diameter there, so you'd have a walkway around it and then a second floor balcony overlooking the labyrinth. So this would be there at all times. You'd have direct access also to Leonard Memorial Chapel, and then here's the entrance off from the east. One of the ushers was asking me, our greeters today, is the ramp going to be as steep? No, it's going to be a lot flatter because it'll be a longer, flatter ramp and have double doors, to keep the weather out, and we can have automatic door openers and that kind of thing. So I think part of the redoing of this is going to make all the spaces much more accessible and much more friendly. Now, one of the challenges that we do have is that the site to the east slopes up about 7 feet from the finished floor of the main building to Burnett Street. So as you go into the multipurpose area, there would actually be a platform area here entering into the multipurpose area. There would be ramps, and there would be new restrooms, both men's and women's restrooms, and a new family restroom to the multipurpose space. That multipurpose space will easily seat 500 plus in a worship setting. As we get to the elevations, you'll see it's sort of a modified cross layout. It ends up being sort of an octagon in plan, but you have a large platform, over 900 square feet of platform area, and this would be a 3-story vaulted area that would complement the rest of the church. But it'd be very flexible. These would not be pews, they would not be fixed seats, but they would be movable so that we can also have banquets and other functions in there as well. Lance wanted to be sure to say that it is multimedia. We would have screens, we would have a good sound system in here. So it was interesting when we were doing the small groups last year, Lance was very outspoken about the need for this non-traditional worship space. But he said, I really don't want to be speaking in a black box. That it's something, you need a inspirational space to go with that message. And so even though we're doing something different, it'll be very, very rich in architectural detail. We're showing that, again, it's a modified cross with Lancet-type windows and stained glass windows on all 4 sides. As we look at a banquet setting, this banquet setting is set up for a little over 300 people, but with the platform, we could easily seat 400 for banquets. There would be an enlarged kitchen off of this, and places for delivery, and that would be improved over our current situation. This is another church that H.H. Architects did, Church of the Incarnation in Dallas. And the reason I'm showing this is some idea of what the open wooden beams could look like in that non-traditional worship space. Now, this is just one of the ideas that we're talking about, but you can see, the Lancet windows, and of course we'd have quadrifoils in those areas, but to let in light, but we could also close it off for medium presentations. So, now one of the things that is going to happen in order to make this central space and make this compact campus, we will be having some area that's demolished from the original 1929 footprint of the building. What this is going to give us an opportunity to do is to open up the area between the rotunda and the sanctuary and the garden, so we have better access to the rotunda. And it's sort of a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is that we're going to replace a lot of the mechanical systems that are outdated. The bad thing is that that's going to cost some money to do that, to relocate that area. But But by doing that relocation, we're probably going to be talking about moving some of the mechanical space over on top of the children's addition, so it's out of the way, so we don't have as much noise bleed over from the mechanical systems, and do overall upgrade to the mechanical system. This is a floor plan of the second floor. Current thinking is that the music suite would stay pretty much where it is with some modification. Some adult classrooms, we have an opportunity to add some adult classrooms. The big thing on the second floor, again, is additional children's area. The two-story playground, indoor playground. This would be a glass area so you could see it from the second level, from the first level. And the playground equipment that's being installed in the atrium now can be relocated and utilized in this new playground area. And then we would also have a new secure entry into the children's wing and preschool. The major reconstruction expansion, we have the central elevators being put in next to the rotunda. One of the ideas is over the east entry is to have a small prayer chapel that would overlook the rotunda and overlook the entry into the multipurpose space just to the north of that. So we have an opportunity to do that. And then the dome over the rotunda. The third floor would be primarily adult classrooms with the library and archives being with good access to the new bank of elevators and the television studio on the third floor, as well as some other music and administrative offices on the northwest area of the campus. So we'd also have an opportunity for a new adult welcome area at the top of the third floor to direct people to the various adult classrooms in that area. This is sort of what it might look like. Again, this is the illustration I had shown before. Wesley Hall and existing classrooms, Memorial Chapel. So this is what we're proposing as an architectural feature, a dome over the rotunda. It would be a 3-story space to here, and then we would have the clear story windows letting natural light into that rotunda, and then the dome over it. And so, again, picking up features from the towers around the rotunda. This is the new colonnaded entry from the east, and a new covered drop-off area. So this would be the non-traditional worship space with stained glass windows on 3 of the sides, and the expansion of the children's area over here. So this is a view if you were out in front of the church in the Justin parking lot, looking straight at the front of the church. You'd just barely be able to see the dome over the top of Wesley Hall, but it would not compete with the uneven Gothic towers of the sanctuary. So this would be the view if you come in off of 4th Street, coming from the east. As you're coming from the east, of course, 4th Street is a one-way street that leads into Memorial Chapel and then turns left into Macon. So you'd have a direct view of the rotunda, the dome, and this east entry, and looking at the side of the non-traditional worship space. One of the things that's really sort of exciting about this is something that is a little bit more challenging to talk about, and that's the parking garage. One of the things that we're doing is that by expanding the church to the east, we're taking up some of that existing surface parking. But as I mentioned a while ago, there's a pent-up demand for for parking for downtown office space already. So we commissioned a parking study with Walker Parking, and they confirmed that there was a pent-up need for parking. This is what the ground floor of the parking garage might look like. We're looking at about 18,000 square foot of office space. This would involve the demolition of the existing foundation building and the foundation offices, the counseling offices, the justice ministry would continue to be housed in this block once the parking garage is built. We're also in discussions with the YMCA as far as the possibility of daycare to partner with them on some of this ground floor space. The main entries into the parking garage would be off of Burnett Street to the east, and then an entry exit off of 5th Street as well. There'd be limited parking on the ground floor with some handicap spaces and a drop-off lane. Then basically there'd be about 79 or 80 parking spaces on each floor above that, with about 30 parking spaces on the ramp. So if we do a 5-level parking garage, that yields us 440 parking spaces. If we do a 6-level parking garage, that gives us about 550 parking spaces, with that top level being on the roof of that. So this would be a great venue for having outdoor gatherings, actually, 4th of July fireworks, or even a sunrise service on top of the parking garage at some future date. This is a SketchUp model of the parking garage. The main elevator serving the church would be at the corner where 4th Street turns to Macon, directly across from Memorial Chapel. We're in discussions with the City of Fort Worth for a new designated crosswalk in that area. The second elevator bank would be in the southeast corner that would serve the office tenants, and we feel like we have an opportunity to serve the downtown community with parking there. This shows the entry into the parking garage from Burnett, which would be right across from the YMCA. We're very careful on all the additions to the church. We're looking at matching the architectural style and details of the existing buildings. So the skin on the parking garage would be the beige brick that you see around the church, and it would match the architectural style of the Justin Building and Memorial Chapel. And so some great detailing as far as the pilasters on the side that would bring in on the parking garage. So, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jerry to talk a little bit about the parking garage.
I'm Jerry Caldwell. I'm a chair of your Board of Trustees. I know most of you. I look forward to meeting those of you who I do not know. Let me take a second and talk some about the business aspects of what happens in a parking garage. Because whenever you think about a church, the one thing that we're not here to do is build a commercial parking garage. However, as a church in downtown, and as we do our expansion, as you can see from Barry's comments there, we do have the need for incremental parking for the church once we finish this, as well as providing parking long-term for us as a church continues to grow. And we have probably been talking about this specifically the garage and how we economically accomplish it for over a year now. And I'll be the first to admit that a year from now, I wasn't overly optimistic that we could get this done, the combination of the cost of doing it and all the various pieces that had to go. But what really happened, and Barry alluded to this earlier, is in the course of last spring, as we talked about looking at doing something for a parking garage, we were approached by about, I think, 6 different either property management companies or buildings or companies downtown that has parking needs. And we met with them, and they said, hey, if y'all are going to do a parking garage, we have an interest in using it during the week. So it really kind of got us refocused on this. What if we could get long-term contract parking for a parking garage during the week that would provide the cash flow to pay for the garage? So the committee that you saw up there earlier, the garage subcommittee, we spent many mornings at breakfast discussing that, coming up with economic models of how it would work. And lo and behold, we came up where we think it's going to. So the skeptic in me is kind of being a lot more positive about it. And let me tell y'all some of the real key pieces that was important to us in a parking garage. Number one is if we had to borrow money to do it, which we might, but it will not be certainly for all of it. We want it to where if there was debt involved, the debt could be repaid in 10 years or less. We have no desire to have long-term debt on a parking garage. The second is the cash flow to pay that debt ongoing would be from long-term contract parkers parking from the downtown business community. The third piece is we would not be using any of the members' continuing gifts that they give for the church for programs and the basic running of the church. And the fourth part would be we would not do any type of long-term capital campaign within the church membership to pay for the garage. We realize that there will be a time for some of those things, but to go out and say we need to raise your money, the church's congregation money, to build a parking garage isn't something that, to be truthful, is not going to sell very well. It's a lot easier to give money for something that's going to enhance the children's wing or build more multi-purpose meeting facilities or worship facilities. So as we work through this, what we have done is we have had some donors approach us and said, you know, we are willing to kind of help that process. At the same time, we have had multiple meetings now, follow-up meetings with the property owners and the businesses that want long-term contract parking. That's been re-verified by them. So where we are now in our process is meeting with those. We have retained counsel to represent the church in putting this together. We're using someone from a local Fort Worth firm who has extensive experience in building contract law related to building buildings, and specifically, really important to us, has negotiated many parking garage type facilities, because what we need to have is that expertise to know that we're getting the bases covered in doing that. So at that point, we feel really good that we are really on track of making this happen. The steps that we're in is we hope to have a lot of those long-term contracts under a letter of intent within the next 60 to 90 days. Of course, nothing on this goes as fast as you wish it would, but we're moving forward on that. I think it's important for y'all to know, and Tim may talk about this in a minute, the process we go through is we will not present anything to either the building committee, the board of trustees, the district superintendent, or ultimately the church congregations who makes the decision on whether or not we do this. You know, we feel very strongly that we have to have, as they say in East Texas, our ducks in a row before we come to you. And that's what we're gathering now, and we're moving forward on it. But we really feel and are very guardedly optimistic that we can accomplish having a parking garage in downtown with those key aspects done, to where the long-term contract parking is what will take care of it. One last benefit to it is if we get all this put together, it takes 6 years to pay for, 7 years to pay for. The other benefit for the church, once it's paid for, the church then has an ongoing revenue stream from that contract parking of several $100,000 a year from this point going forward. So what it does, it builds another revenue source as an annuity from the church once we get over the construction and the payment of it. So that's something that makes us feel really good about the project. Plus, it's providing 450 to 550 parking spaces that will meet our parking needs for a long time. One of the things as chair of the board of trustees I really think about a lot and pray about is we sit in downtown Fort Worth, as Barry shown, with all these blocks of land around us. That's because of the leadership that this church has had for the last 50 years to buy land when available, even though we don't have a need for it then. But they were wise enough to know that when you only get one shot sometimes at a piece of property, and you better get it whenever you can. As we think about these projects we're doing now, the parking garage, the other expansion, the thing that I really think about is how are these decisions going to be viewed, not by anybody in this room, unless there's some children here, but really how are these decisions we're making today going to be viewed for our church 40 and 50 years from now? Because that's what we're talking about is the impact these will have on the church. And those are the things that we are very serious in our thoughts about. So that's really the plan for how we make the parking garage work. We're putting the pieces together. We hope we have most of them put together pretty quickly, relatively speaking. And certainly, I know as Tim here will speak, we're going to be here for questions, and there'll be a lot of them, but don't be disappointed if we say we're still working on it, because we still are on a lot of things. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Jerry. A couple other views of the parking lot. This is what it would look like looking from the church, actually the roof of the church, back towards downtown. But you can see, the construction happening. And this is a perspective of sort of how the parking garage would fit in with the rest of the campus. It would take up that full block of the foundation block, but it fit in architecturally with the rest of the campus. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Brister.
Thank you so much. I just want to add my thanks and appreciation to the building committee, to Barry Hudson, to Jerry Caldwell for all the work y'all have done. And I know you join me, I hope, in appreciating them, because Jerry sometimes talks about his paying job, and I know that's true for Barry as well. They both have paying jobs, but they also have hours and hours of work that they've put in here and treated it like a job. And, I tell them every now and then, we're going to double your salary. We've doubled it several times, tripled it a couple of times. And so far that's worked. Yeah. But I really appreciate that very much. And Jerry alluded to this, but we've been talking in this whole series that I've been doing on Sunday morning about those who have gone before us and the bold decisions that they made and the things that they did to set the stage for where we are today. And now is our time. Now is our time. And so it's really important that we do this thoroughly and carefully. One thing you may have noticed, and I don't believe Barry mentioned this, if you saw the master plan of 2 or 3 years ago, you notice that this one is much more compact. That other plan pretty well just sort of filled up the space all the way east as far as it would go. And this plan is laid out in a much smarter way, much more compact, and makes wayfinding a snap. And I have long-term members of the church who will say, well, I don't know exactly how to get from here to there, even if they've been in the church for a long time. So you can imagine how it is for someone coming to the church for the first time to be able to walk in and they'll be able to see everything. The prayer labyrinth at the center says so much, that the center, the heart of our church is prayer and worship. And architecturally, the plan says that. So those are my additional thoughts. You mentioned something about process, and there is a process. We are, after all, Methodists, and there are lots of committees. And so there is a process for any building program, and for a project of this size, it requires a congregational vote. It's called a church conference. You hear us talk about charge conference a lot. And the charge conference is the board of stewards and the appointed clergy and other clergy that are related to our church, retired clergy. They're all part of the charge conference. A church conference is any member of the church or clergy person and clergy people that are associated with the church who are present and voting. So that's a church conference, and we will have one of those. There are other steps we have to go through. There's a district committee on church building and location that has to approve it. The district superintendent, of course, has to approve it. The pastor has to actually approve it as well as part of that process. And the Board of Trustees, everybody will be looking at this in one way or the other to get to the point then finally of a congregational vote. And that, again, that has to do with the size of the project. A smaller project, like some of the work we did in the children's wing, something like that, doesn't require a congregational vote. And that has to do with the percentage of the value, the overall value of all the property. And so the parking garage exceeds that percentage, and so does the rest of the facility without question. So there will be those other opportunities and other votes that will be coming up. Okay. Are you ready for questions, or do you have other? Okay. And to reiterate, I should say one more thing. To reiterate those three main things that surfaced in all of the committee meetings and the discussions and the work with HH Architects is gathering space, community space. It is a children's ministry, and it's worship space other than the sanctuary that will accommodate our other worship venues. That third one is becoming a very critical need. The gathering, which meets at 9:30 over in Wesley Hall, has outgrown that space, and starting the first Sunday in March will be at 9:30 in Wesley Hall as they are now, and it will happen again in the Asbury Room in the Justin Building at 11 o'clock. And so that will accommodate growth for a while, but then that space will be exceeded. And so you might think, well, why not combine that worship service into the 9:30 service in the sanctuary, for example? Because that's a completely different style of worship, and the way things happen in that space could not happen in the sanctuary. And so that's the challenge that we face. We need that alternative worship space, because these days a church needs to be able to accommodate a number of worship styles, a church like ours, a number of ways of being together in worship, and we want to accommodate that. Okay, thanks. Barry?
We've been wrapping up all the presentations we've been doing by really talking about three key things. One is to share this information with others, with your Sunday school classes, with your small groups, Bible study, choir, library volunteers, ushers. Share it with other people. And we want input. We want the hard questions to come up. Because we've been thinking about it a lot, but we need that input. And then most of all, we need to pray about this, because is this really the direction that God wants us to do? Is this something that we need to do for our faith community? So those are the things that we need to do going forward as we go through this process. And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Those of us who've been working on this for a year or two, especially, and I got to give kudos to Barry. I cannot tell you how much time and energy. Let's give him a hand. I can't tell you how much time and energy he's put into this. And I think I can safely say that he would love to be able to say we could start all this in a year. But there's a lot to do and a lot of work to do. But I will say, and I can speak for Tim from this, we are very cognizant of the need to move forward, because we have a wonderful opportunity for a lot of the components on this. And as some of us have sat and had coffee and talked about it, if you think about everything that's happening in Fort Worth over the next 30 years, downtown Fort Worth is going to run from here to University, because West 7th will become downtown Fort Worth as well, and up north on Panther Island. So, we have the chance, properly positioned, to be the religious center of Fort Worth, Texas for the next 50 years. And that's the vision that we talk about. Tim?
That's good.
Well, why don't you get up and close or something? Well, no, are there other questions? No, we don't want to cut anybody short.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know if you were coming up to say something, Ben. Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, this is really exciting, and we really do see the need, for all of those components, particularly in the very near term, the alternative worship space, and the gathering space. Yeah, we will move. I think it's safe to say everybody will move as fast as possible. At the same time, doing all of the feasibility studies and the things that have to go into projects like this. I mean, you really have to move in a smart way, and we've got the lay leadership in this church is the finest lay leadership I've ever worked with in my ministry. And one thing that you can definitely trust is our lay leaders who are in the positions they're in know what they're doing. And if they don't know something, they get the expertise that they need to find out. And so you can feel very confident in the stewardship and the care of the lay leadership of this church. And I think that's extremely important for you to know and for you to help others know that that's the quality of our leadership and those who are involved in this. So I thank you for coming this afternoon and for great questions. One of the things that I just will say just briefly, one of the concerns I know that people have raised with the parking garage and no one has asked it is the issue of security. And one of the things that we've learned is the security that's available now for parking garages is outstanding. The technology that's available, the access control during the week when we're not using it at nighttime, the thing is shut down. It's not like just a gate comes down. I mean, it is closed off. And knowing who's in there and at any given moment, exactly who's in there, the person who's parking there is possible now because it uses toll tags, the same toll tags you use for the toll road for access to the parking. I won't get into all of that, but it's astounding, really, what is available. And so security will be top-notch. When it's open in the evening, when we're having a church event, we'll have a live security person there. So it'll be secure. Yeah, because I know that's something that several people have asked me, and it didn't come up, and I wanted to make sure you heard that. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you being here. And I'm going to ask Lance, would you mind closing us in prayer, please, sir? As a Methodist preacher, you got to be ready to preach, pray, or die at any moment, right?
Yeah, wait, hold on. I haven't heard that, actually. Would y'all pray with me, please? Loving God, we thank you so much for the presence in this place. We thank you for your spirit that surrounds us and guides us. We thank you for giving us a vision of the future, for calling us to be your people, and for showing us how to walk with you every day of our lives. Lord, please bless us and keep us as we go from this place to pray and to consider how we can be your people in the world. And it's in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ, that we all pray and say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Good job, man.